Welcome to the installation guide for the SRC Moto auxiliary wiring harness for the Royal Enfield Himalayan. You're going to need some basic hand tools, a 4mm Allen wrench, that's to remove the fasteners on the windscreen where the brackets for the 12-volt and USB sockets attach, a razor knife or pair of scissors to trim back a little bit of the wiring harness insulation to access the supply wire that powers up the relay, Phillips screwdriver or a 10mm socket and ratchet, or a T-handle if you have, and that is to remove the 2 fuel tank bolts, and you can also use that to remove the 2 battery bolts. Here's the harness. This fits 2017 to 2021 models. It may fit later models as they progress. On this end here we have the 2 battery terminal connections, 15 amp fuse. This yellow lead here, that connects to the wire harness on your Himalayan and provides the power switching to this relay here, so that when you turn on the ignition key, it powers up this system to provide power to the dual USB socket and the 12-volt socket. This is the SAE connector that typically most battery chargers will plug into. This ends up being just underneath the gas tank by the rear brake master cylinder fluid reservoir. So let's get started. Take the keys out of the ignition and remove the seat. Is to remove these 2 bolts, so you can lift the fuel tank up a little bit to gain access for the wiring harness to come through here. You'll be routing the harness kind of up through this area here, underneath this frame tube, and then it'll come out up here where you can make your battery terminal connections and also access the stock wiring harness to connect for the switching circuit. Okay, now got the 2 fuel tank retaining bolts have been removed, and I just stuck this handle of this screwdriver on here to hold it up, so we'll have room to route the SRC harness up through here. You can use anything that's, roll of masking tape or something, just anything to give you a little space to work with here. Even though it's very unlikely to have an issue, we always recommend to take the fuse out of the fuse holder here while you're doing the installation, just to prevent any possibility of shorting to the battery. So take that out and just set the fuse aside for during the installation. There you can see the fuse, 10 amp fuse. With the fuse removed, just wiggle the fuse a little bit and pull on it and it'll come out pretty easily. And just set it inside the little tray here so you don't lose it. Actually, probably better to put it right here with those bolts. So we're going to be routing the wires right up through this area here. It can be a little challenging to push the wires up through there, so what we do is just use a zip tie, or you could use a pencil or anything, something about 8 to 10 inches long, and just route it down through here. Right through there, and we're going to tape the end of the wiring harness. We'll tape these 3 to the end of the zip tie or whatever you use, and then just pull it right through there to fish it through. Okay, we've got the battery connection end of our harness taped to our little fishing tool, the zip tie. Got the other end of it up right here. Just gonna carefully kind of work this up through here. It's a little tight through here, so you might have to wiggle it pull it around a little bit, but once you get it up in through there, you might also have to kind of help guide it through the other end so nothing gets stuck. There it goes. The fuse holder, you got to kind of orient it to fit through there. There it goes. Okay, now that you've got the SRC harness fished up into the area by the battery, you should have your ignition switch line, negative battery, positive battery, the fuse holder, and we're going to pull the stock harness out from under this bracket here, just like that. Then lay the SRC harness back in there, put the harness back into place. Okay, now we're going to get ready to position this for the connections. The fuse holder should end up somewhere right about in this area. Okay. The next step is connecting this yellow wire to this terminal right here, this wire. You can identify this connector. It's got 3 wires going across on this side. If you flip it over, there's 2 wires on the bottom. You can see this. There's a green and white wire and a black wire. And this is the wiring harness that goes back to the tail light and brake lights and turn signals. And what we're hooking up to here is the tail light. So whenever you switch the ignition on, this is energized. That goes through this yellow wire here to our relay, and that's what powers up the sockets. And it's controlled by the ignition switch. We turn the key off, everything is powered down. You turn the ignition on, this re-energizes the relay, provides a direct connection to the battery, and keeps your battery from running down, and just as a nice switched power source. This connector may be buried down under some other ECU components here if your bike has ABS. If you do not have ABS, it's just going to be hanging out right here. So again, if you have an ABS model, you might have to dig for this a little bit, but what you're looking for is this connector, and it is this yellow wire with a gray tracer on it. And it's that center wire in the connector, and you can orient it by the retaining clip here that holds it in place. Okay, so the next step is to connect the ignition switching circuit. Just unscrew this little red end of the posi tap here, pull this wire out, unscrew the other end that has this slot in it, slip this over the wire that we identified earlier, the yellow wire with the gray stripe on it. Get it on there fully seated, nice like that. Then this metal tip here will pierce the wire when you reattach this. Get it nice and tight all the way to where it's fully seated. Then just unscrew this end a little bit. Get your wires nice and straight and just insert it, wiggle it a little bit so it goes down and seats around the metal stud. Then just tighten this. That'll give you a nice, secure, corrosion-free connection. Give it a little yank, make sure it's all good. And that's all that takes. One point we forgot to mention is you may have to trim a little bit of this protective plastic sheathing back to gain access to the wires here for this connection. It just kind of all depends. Some bikes have plenty of wire showing. We had to trim back about 1/4 inch of material here to gain access for that connection. Pretty easy to do. Okay, here you can see we've got the posi tap installed properly where it's fully seated. You can see can't really screw it down any further. Next, we're going to connect our 2 battery leads. We're going to make the positive and negative connections to the battery. Black goes to this terminal here. That is the negative terminal. You can confirm that by the black wire connected to it. Red goes to the positive. Very easy. The only thing you might lose here is your clock setting. I think that's about it though. So let's do this. Pop this through here like that. Be sure and set the wire end so it's not being clamped down on this bar here. Just kind of perpendicular like that, works good. Now the positive connection. It fits in there good like that, coming out of the corner there where there's a nice opening. And that's it. Here we're looking at the relay unit. It ends up being right back here, kind of on top of the injector and to the left of your engine temp sensor wire. That kind of comes down and goes in here, you can see. And you want to connect, use one of the provided zip ties to connect to the fuel line here. That's going to keep any of the harness from getting close to the engine, so there's no problems with engine heat affecting the harness. Kind of difficult to see here, but we're following the fuel line up to here. That's the fuel pump right here. Then we go with the harness back around behind the fuel pump and kind of route it up there. You'll see as you come out at the front of the gas tank. Okay, here you can see our harness coming up through here. You want to route it through this wire guide here, and then you go up with the blue connectors. They end up coming up right here, and the red connectors over here. And this is in preparation of installing the brackets and sockets and making the electrical connections to them. We don't install them onto the harness because you have to fish them through these really small openings on each side. So once you get the wires up through here, you connect them to the sockets, and then you can install them on these studs, the bolts that hold the windscreen in place. Okay, this is the right side windscreen, kind of rearmost retaining fastener. We're going to loosen that up, take it out. Okay, we've got the screw undone here, and this is the rubber well nut that is used to retain the windscreen. This is real common. Most motorcycle manufacturers do this. Just a rubber thing, little rubber grommet that has a metal thread insert vulcanized to it. So the bracket goes down on that fastener, then you put the well nut back on it and tighten it up. So we're going to do that. You remove this boot off the back of your socket, and you'll see the 2 spade connectors that the wiring harness connects to. Here you can see we've got the boot removed. Here on this side you can see the the negative terminal, and on this side you can see the positive terminal. Red goes to positive, black goes to negative. Be sure and slide the boot into place before you connect your socket. Okay, here's the harness connected and the boot installed in place. Now we're just going to carefully attach this bracket to the fastener and put the well nut back on there and tighten her up. It's a little cramped working back in here, so what we have found works best is take your well nut and kind of wedge it into place between the boot and the bracket like this. Make sure that the threads are lined up there, and then position it and snug down the fastener, and that'll pull it all back into alignment and it won't be pushing into the boot like that. All right, there it is installed. It will move around a little bit, or just for adjustment, but it's not going to go anywhere. The well nut will keep it from vibrating loose or anything, and just tends to stay in place without any trouble. Repeat the process on the left side and you should end up with something looking about like this. If for some reason you prefer to have the sockets on the opposite sides than we're showing here, you can do that. You just need to take them out of the brackets and flip them over, or actually just loosen the brackets and flip them over. We just kind of went with this because it seems like you're getting into your USB port more than the 12-volt socket, and it's easier to access with your right hand than over here, but that's a personal preference thing. Install the fuse, put the fuse cover back on, kind of hide this down here a little bit. Don't forget to put in your tank retaining bolts, and then last thing you want to do, well, don't forget to put your seat on. And then just double check, make sure everything's working okay. Open up your deal here. There it is. Power's up. We do have a new, slightly more waterproof USB socket that has an integrated voltmeter. So in this case, your voltmeter would be coming on and telling you how much voltage your battery's got. So anyways, that's it. Let us know if you have any questions or you run into any hiccups, and we'll be glad to help. info@srcmotor.com or 503-705-8079.